Hello, and welcome to the We Get to Do This podcast. My name is Kaylee.
And I'm Jacob.
And we are your co-hosts.
In this show, we're going to dive into all things our lives, from our partnership to romance to entrepreneurship to growing our businesses together, our fitness journeys, and we're going to have a ton of different guests on that relate to what I just said in some way. We're hoping you enjoy the show, and if you do,
please feel free to follow us, leave us a 5-star review on wherever you listen to your podcasts, and enjoy.
And if you don't like the show, tough. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the We Get to Do This podcast. It is Coach Jacob here doing a solo episode. Kind of like my first solo episode, actually. So we'll see how this goes. Kaylee and I have recorded in the past. We've done some episodes, or at least one, and I know I have too, on strength training for runners. But I had this idea based on questions I've gotten and just reoccurring themes that have popped up of doing a little 2-episode series on strength training, kind of 101 for runners. This applies to ultra runners, trail runners, road runners, track. You could even, if you're an endurance athlete that is skiing only or biking only, you're going to get a lot out of this episode as well. So, although I'm going to say runners a lot, I would like to reiterate that this is for anyone endurance, and honestly, anyone who is not strength training and maybe should be. This is something that you might want to consider doing as well. I have now done, I believe, 10 marathons. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we get into Tokyo, and that will be 11. That'd be really cool. I've done 10 marathons, and the first 4 marathons I did, I remember finishing each marathon and bending over in pain, hands on knees type of thing. Not from hard breathing and that type of vibe. Yes, that was going on for sure too. But I remember I physically could not lengthen and straighten my legs anymore and stand up straight. I would have to bend over and take pressure off my knees because they hurt so bad. And at the time, this was probably 5 years ago, right? Those first 4 to 5 or maybe 6, whatever it was, marathons I did. At the time, I remember thinking, well, everyone says running's horrible for your knees. So running long distances is going to, over time, beat your knees up. And I just was like, well, I'm 20, 21, 22, 23, whatever. I'll just worry about that later and not, think a whole lot of it. And just this is how it is with running. It's going to be hard on my knees, right? Then, as I got into personal training and got a job at Performance Running Gym back in 2021 now, I started strength training and learning more. And I didn't really think about it a whole lot in terms of the effects it would have on running. I was just kind of doing it. If you've listened to my past, I strength trained a lot, have a ton of experience doing that. And then I kind of switched to running, right? And I was just running, like I said, did those marathons, hurt my knees a lot, whatever. And then I finally combined them. And when I combined them, I remember finishing, it was Wobegon Marathon. I think it was 2022. And I got done and my knees didn't hurt at all. And I was like, okay, that was different. What was different this marathon compared to the last 5 I had done, that my knees were again, I'd be bending over. I was walking around fine, completely fine. And it was at the time a PR for me. So but only by 5 minutes. So it wasn't a drastic shorter amount of time running or anything like that. And I was interesting. Then about 6-7 weeks later, I was able to bounce back really quick and run Grandma's marathon that same year. I believe it was 6 weeks, maybe 5. Not only did I bounce back, I PR'd Grandma's marathon. I had a better race there. And my knees again didn't hurt. And again, I was like, okay, what am I doing differently right now that my knees aren't hurting after these long marathons? Then you start thinking back to the long runs you had and you're like, oh, my knees didn't really hurt during any of those either. Actually, my quads felt not fatigued the whole time. What did I do differently? And then the other thing was I just ran 2 marathons in the span of 5 weeks, and I was able to do them both. Now, I'm not saying that's a good thing. Not saying that you should do that by any means, but it was like an eye-opening thing for me of like, okay, something's different here. And I'm also not going to just put this all on strength training. Nutrition plays a role too in fueling during the race. However, strength training, incorporating that into that block was the biggest thing I did differently that allowed me to have those effects of my knees not hurting, of bouncing back, of getting through long runs, of thinking even, more specifically now, I was able to run more mileage. I was able to do harder workouts. I was able to bounce back from those quicker. It was pretty crazy at the time. And then I was like, okay, yep, I'm sold. Strength training is 1000% helping me. I know it is. And now we've got research that shows it. I've helped tons of different athletes improve their time, improve their volume of their running, improve their long runs, etc. Right? All of that stuff. And not only that, but when we think about longevity, we know as a society, strength training is so beneficial for bone health, muscle health, hormonal health, everything. It's so good for us. So you pair that fact with endurance athletes who are constantly breaking down their bodies, specifically runners and road runners. It is so hard on the body, constantly breaking down their bodies over time. You need to be strengthening them back up. And hopefully this podcast kind of tells you how you're going to do that. So I'm going to split this up into 3 different sections. The first one is going to be the why. Why should you strength train? And I kind of just went through some of that. Then we're going to go over the how. How are we going to strength train? Specifically, how are we going to structure it with our running? How long our workout's going to be? When should you put the workouts? That type of stuff. Then we're going to go over what, more specifically, like what exercises you should be doing, what body parts you should be doing, sets and reps, things like that. Okay. So to start, why should you be strength training? There are 3 reasons I think about with this. Number 1 is injury mitigation. Number 2 is the performance side of things. And number 3, I put a little Jacob flair on this, avoiding burnout. Injury mitigation. Number 1, we know strength training makes us more resilient. I just talked about that. All right. If you want to put this more into the running realm, I always think about my quad muscles first. And every time you are landing, every time you send shock up your body through the shins and then quads, but the quads are so important for protecting the knee specifically every single step. You are sending, depending on who you are, like textbooks will say 2 to 3 times body weight. After doing more 3D gait analysis over the past year, it is definitely more than that for a lot of people. That is just what a textbook says. There's a good chance you're sending 5+ times your body weight into each leg every single step. Okay? Quads are one of the first shock absorbers in addition to your shins, with your shins. Keeping those strong is a great example of staying away from injuries to that area. Another thing to think about with this, glutes. It's a great example. The stronger your glutes, glute med, glute max, piriformis, those types of muscles, those stability muscles, the stronger they are, the more stable your hips will be. The more stable your hips will be, then you can avoid injuries like runner's knee. We see that one all the time. IT band syndrome, runner's knee, or jumper's knee, things like that. All the time. They pop up. Issues. You can also get issues at your hips, right? There's tons of different things. Keeping strong ankles. All of the muscles that attach on there. People get ankle injuries all the time. Keeping strong muscles to the ankles are going to keep your ankles strong. And one that I like to point out too, core and hips work together, but your core, specifically I'm thinking about muscles like your transverse abdominis and your QLs, but there's more. But those two I see a lot with runners. Keeping those muscles strong will be so good and beneficial for specifically low back issues in running. Everything I just said isn't necessarily strengthen your quads, you won't ever get a knee issue. Strengthen your TFL, you'll never get an IT band issue. Strengthen your glutes, you'll never end up with a hip situation. Strengthen your QLs, you will never get a back issue. They don't necessarily correlate that perfectly, but understanding the purpose of having a well-rounded, strong body is going to keep injuries, at least at bay, mitigated. I once had someone tell me that you can't prevent every single injury. And I agree with that to an extent. I've learned you can be doing everything right, and you may still get an injury at some point. But you can mitigate them. So why should you strength train? Injury mitigation. That's number one. Number two is the performance aspect of it. Becoming more powerful, becoming more efficient as a runner, and just being able to resist fatigue over time, especially if you're doing long distance events, is going to increase your performance. Stronger glutes, more powerful push-off, uphills, or just in general. Stronger quads, ability to land more effectively, fight off fatigue, so later in the race, your quads aren't cramping up. In addition to that, if you're trying to increase performance on a race, one of the best ways to do that is by running more or increasing your intensity in your training. And how do you do that? You do that by staying strong or stronger so that you can do more, and then your performance goes up. If you lift and you do it in a smart, planned way, especially after listening to this podcast, it should help your running. It should not, quote unquote, make you bulkier. It should not make you recover less. I hear those two things a lot. It should not make you less mobile. It can do those things, but if you're doing it correctly, it should actually do the opposite of that for your running. Injury prevention, performance. The third one, Jacob Flair. It allows you to avoid burnout in the sport. Unless you are a pro runner, which the odds are good you are not if you're listening to this podcast. And if you are, I'd love to know who you are because that'd be kind of cool. You likely use running as an outlet for something. Stress reliever in your day-to-day life. It's likely one of your biggest hobbies. It's probably something that's part of your identity. It shouldn't be your identity, but it might be part of your identity. I've seen so many people who, when they lose running, either from burning out or from an injury, have pretty wicked mental spills. I've seen it time and time and time again. Adding strength training in and adding some variety is going to allow you to avoid burnout from the sport. Burnout from getting injured all the time, burnout from just doing it all the time. You're in a different environment in the gym. It's more refreshing. You might get a different community aspect than you will with running. With running, you typically are running a lot of times with people that are within your pace ranges. Every once in a while, yes, but for the most part, yes, it may change, but for the most part, you're running with people that are around your pace ranges, around your similar goals. That's great. That's great. The weight room's cool because it changes that. You could be lifting next to someone that might be running a marathon 30 minutes faster than you, that you would probably never do easy miles with or speed workouts with. And new challenges. I have athletes who will get super floored up about, simple things like a chin up or a max push up amount, or benching more or squatting more. Like, it's a new environment. It's a new stimulus. It's going to make you think and give you a break in a different way than running always does. And if you're someone that's in Minnesota, something to also think about is during the winter months when it's snowing, it's a good way to be inside and not have to go and always be outside in the cold snow. And when it's super hot, same idea. Why should you do strength training? Mitigate injuries, increase your performance. You're going to ideally avoid burnout by adding variety in. Now, how do we fit strength training into our program? This is going to be fairly general, but it should be enough to make you think and give you some great ideas. If you have specific questions about your specific amount of mileage, specific job, specific intensity, specific races you have in the year, whatever it is, please reach out, www.oakendurance.com, or you can email me at jacob@oakendurance.com. So how often should you be strength training? Let's start with times per week that you should be strength training. I like to tell people a typical rule of thumb is to think for every 2 to 4 runs, roughly, I'm getting some type of strength training session in, some quality strength training session in. During your off season, it will likely be more strength training focused than during, say, your taper week or your in season, right? So during the off season, maybe you're going every 2 days, whereas during the in season and taper period, maybe every 3 to 4 days. If you're running a lot, whatever that means to you, you may only be able to handle and recover from 2 days of strength training a week. And if you're in a period where you're running less, whatever that means to you, maybe you can do 3 to 4 days a week. And that's the time in the off season usually to work on building a little bit of extra muscle mass, a little bit of extra strength and durability for the future miles that are coming up. As far as when you should put them in relation to your runs, the next kind of thing people ask all the time, do I put my strength training days with the days that I'm doing speed workouts and running? Do I put it on a long run day? Do I put it on the easy days? I've gone back and forth on this a lot. The reasoning I've gone back and forth on this a lot is because if I gave the quote unquote best answer, I would say keep your hard days hard. So any day that is hard in running should be the day that you do a lift on as well. And ideally, it should be at least 5 hours later. Now, the reason I have gone back and forth on that is because, again, we are not pros. We have other obligations in life in which we may not be able to follow those standards. So if you are in that boat and hard days hard in terms of speed days and then long runs are your hard days. If you're in that boat though, and you need to mix things up, a few things to think about. Number 1, try to do your runs first. If you only can get to the gym in the morning, you can't go back at night, right? Or, can't do 2 workouts like that. Do the run first and then strength train. Don't strength train and then run. If you have to strength train and then run, I highly recommend don't do a speed workout after that session. Anytime you have a speed workout or a long run, that comes first. Remember that. You don't have to follow that 5+ hour rule, but just try to strength train after the run. In addition to that, the whole same day thing is important, I think, in terms of maximizing recovery. Your form's going to be better if you don't lift the day before you run, right? So it's better to do a lift and then have just easy miles the next day that you don't have to worry about a pace or a heart rate or an effort or anything, right? However, something that I have found that has been beneficial for people, and you'll know if this is if this is your circumstance. Say you can only get to the gym on like Monday that week and you can only get to a track on Tuesday. It happens. If that's the case, do not skip your strength training day. Instead, try to keep the strength training session within 24 hours of that speed workout. So what I mean by that is, like I said, ideally you would not do a strength training session and then 2 hours later do a speed workout. However, if it's like a Monday, Tuesday situation, you can do strength in the afternoon and then try to do your speed in that next morning. You will likely not feel any soreness or a ton of soreness to really fatigue yourself and make that workout not as beneficial, quote unquote, yet. And then you'll get sore Tuesday nights. So those are my kind of hacks for the whole timing of strength training and fitting it in. As far as how long the sessions should be, I always tell people 10 minutes is better than nothing. If you can only get in and do push-ups and pull-ups and maybe some dips and a few plank variations, that's better than doing nothing. All right. And in that situation, if you need to throw it after the track workout on turf for extra 10 minutes, do it. Just get it in. Right. If you're actually in the gym, I like to think about it as 30 to 60 minutes, usually, with a proper warm up, proper cool down. You shouldn't be lifting more than an hour, generally speaking, for what we as endurance athletes are doing. 3 to 5 main exercises. If we'll get into kind of like the what in a second here, but if you're doing supersets, maybe like 8-ish, then, like it shouldn't be anything super, super crazy. It shouldn't be anything super high volume. That's the how on strength training. How often should I do it? When should I do it? How long should the workout be? Those kinds of things. Now, as far as what you should be doing during the actual strength training sessions. We're going to start with the body parts that we should be thinking about as runners. So when I think about running, I kind of already alluded to some of these muscle groups in the beginning of this section or this podcast. I like to start with the core. And so when I describe the core, I'm thinking about my body as a tree, right? Anything knee down and anything from the shoulders out and then the head, I would say, are more of like the quote unquote branches. So torso to the knees, core. Lots and lots of core. I'm big on core exercises. Things like planks, things like anti-rotation holds, pull-off presses, back extensions, side planks. You can do Copenhagen planks. You can do a side plank with one leg up, that type of stuff. I'm very big on core. I think core would possibly come first if you're, prioritizing things. Then I would get into like more specific muscle groups, I guess. But core, more core. Do your core work for sure. Then I'm thinking about, like I talked about already, quads. All four quadricep muscles are very important for different reasons. The hamstrings are a very important part of our gait, calf musculature, our shins, glutes, specifically glute medians. Don't forget about them. They are very important for stabilizing the pelvis. And I also like to train push and pull patterns. If you want to get into, like the patterns and why that's important, we released a podcast on this recently too, and that dives deeper into like why each, squat, hinge, lunge, twist, push, pull, gait, why each pattern is important. Go listen to that too, right? But when we are moving our torso, our upper body, the ability to rotate it, to push, pull constantly with the upper body is very important. So don't forget about that, especially for posture. Tons of people like to start to hunch over towards the end of runs. So you need to make sure you're doing that. And then also don't forget about your feet. Feet and ankles as a complex. You can just think knee down, shins, calves, feet, ankles. Train all of those as well. Keep your feet strong. This can be as easy as also just being barefoot more, but towel scrunches, calf raises barefoot, things like that. Train your calves, train your shins. Do plyos, do jumping things. In addition to all of the muscle groups, remember, running is a single leg activity. Single leg activity, and it is way more pulling than people realize. So for single leg, that side of it, do single leg things. Lunges, step ups, Bulgarian split squats, side planks with one leg up, Copenhagen's, single leg bridges, curtsy lunges, single leg RDLs, single leg calf raises, single leg Swiss ball bridges. How long could I go? I don't know. Do single leg stuff. Don't forget that running is a single leg activity. And then in addition to that, like I said, pulling. Yes, train your quads. I emphasize that a lot already, but don't forget that running is very pulling intensive. So what I mean by that is train your glutes, train your hamstrings. Don't forget about those muscles. People love to forget about those muscles and they end up with hamstrings and glute issues. Just try to be well-rounded. Try to do all of the muscle groups. I like to split my workouts up typically for athletes and myself, typically by full body. Roughly 70% of the workout is legs and core focused, and then like 20 to 30% is upper body, like a bench and a chin up, and but even when I'm doing upper body, I'm trying to do something core, and I would recommend doing something core intensive with it. So chin ups are a great core intensive exercise, right? Push ups, bench press on a Swiss ball, bird dog rows, things like that. Don't forget those things. As far as the sets and reps and timing of things go, this is going to be, and the weights, right, of what you should be doing. Should I lift heavy? Should I lift high rep, right? This is going to depend a little bit on who you are and where you are at in your training. I will get more into this in part 2 of this series, in which I'm going to go over pretty much a whole year of periodization, when to lift heavy, when to reduce volume, how to progress, how to regress things, and what exercises you should be doing where, when you should do supersets, things like that. For this episode, I'm going to keep it again relatively general. When you first start strength training, assuming you have no background in it, it is very important to learn the movement patterns. Again, I already did a podcast on this. That usually, like not even usual, that takes higher reps. So when people are like, runners need to lift heavy, they do. Yes, they do. However, you can't lift heavy unless you know how to do a movement. And in order to know how to do a movement, you need to teach your nervous system and your brain how to do that movement, which takes reps. You can't do that from lower rep, super high weight right off the bat. I see people do that all the time. That's how you get hurt in the weight room, and then you blame strength training for an injury as a runner. Start high rep, start body weight, start with bands, start with core, master the fundamentals. If you can't do a squat correctly, or if you can't do a hinge or a push or a pull or a lunge or a rotation, or even just like gait exercises, skipping, things, anything like that. If you can't do those things correctly, that's where you start first. Master those. Then you can get more specific. As you get more specific, generally speaking, the reps will come down and the sets will go up. So you might start with like 2x20 body weight squat. And then eventually that turns into 3x10 to 15, maybe, probably 10. Now you're going to add some weight. Now you might start doing dumbbell squats, barbell squats, right? Eventually, that might turn into 4 to 5 sets by 4 to 6 reps, and we're going to go really heavy. Once you're able to kind of do that progression, then, depending on where you're at, I might start doing supersets and introducing dynamic exercises more and more and more plyometric exercises, which we will talk about more in part 2 of this podcast. Generally speaking, start with body weight, go to bands, then start doing some maybe free weight, machine weighted stuff, right? Then start going to the heavy realm. Then start doing, once you're kind of, through that, and then you can get more specific on supersets and maybe doing like squats, 2 box jumps, 2 a plank, things like that. So, and then don't forget, train single leg. This episode was all on strength training, part 1. Why you should do it, how you should do it, and what you should do for it. Again, if you have any questions on this, please reach out. Jacob at oakendurance.com or oakendurance.com. I do one-on-one training. I do gait analysis. I do strength classes. And I do online strength and run coaching through Training Peaks. My we get to do this moment is that Kaylee and I are leaving for Washington in less than 2 weeks for a 20-day sabbatical. And I'm so excited to get out, do some deep work, spend some time with some friends at a wedding. I'm seeing my run coach out there. Kaylee and I are going to get a lot of time to hopefully plan some life events and things that we're doing for the businesses too. I'm just excited to have a little vacation. It's going to be a great time. So that's the podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. First solo episode. If you have any questions, please reach out. This is Jacob. And we really missed you, Kaylee. Excited to have you back. We get to do this. Have a good one, y'all.
Wow, Kaylee, we made it through another episode. What do you think?
We would love if you would go give us a follow, a 5-star review, and comment on the episode and what you liked and what you'd like to see more of.
See you next time.
We get to do this.